Somewhere in your head, there's a number, a specific amount of money that, if you ever reached it, would finally make everything feel easier. You've probably changed that number a few times over the years, always slightly higher than wherever you currently stand, always just out of reach in a way that feels suspiciously convenient. Most people assume life gets easier the moment the number gets bigger. It doesn't, not exactly, and not all at once. Ease arrives in strange, uneven fragments, one specific kind of stress disappearing while another, quieter one takes its place almost immediately. So let's actually find out, level by level, when life starts getting easier, and what it cost you to discover that the answer isn't what you expected. You're standing at the gas pump watching the numbers climb, and you stop the pump manually at $20 instead of filling the tank completely. A decision made not from preference but from knowing exactly how much room is left in your account until Friday. Your phone buzzes with a notification about a subscription renewing, something you forgot to cancel months ago, and you feel your stomach tighten before you've even opened the app to check the damage. At work, your manager mentions overtime is available this weekend, and you say yes before he's finished the sentence. The kind of yes that comes from need, not ambition. You skip a friend's dinner invitation, telling them you're just busy, when the truth is closer to math you'd rather not explain out loud to anyone. That night, you lie awake doing arithmetic instead of sleeping, the same numbers circling without ever landing anywhere useful. Here's the truth nobody says directly at this level. It's not that you're bad with decisions, it's that every single decision carries weight disproportionate to its actual size, because there's no margin left to absorb a mistake. Life doesn't get easier here, it just gets quieter about how hard it actually is. You build a small cushion, a few $1,000s sitting untouched, and the first real test arrives when your car needs an unexpected repair costing $400 you didn't budget for. You pay it without spiraling, a moment so unremarkable it barely registers as a moment at all. Except that a year earlier, this exact scenario would have ruined your entire week. A friend mentions she's trying to save too, and for the first time, money becomes something you discuss out loud without flinching, a small relief in simply not hiding anymore. You sleep through the night without waking at 3 a.m. to mentally recheck numbers that haven't changed since you last checked them. The deeper truth surfacing here is one quietly contradicting everything you assumed. Life doesn't get dramatically easier yet. It just gets slightly quieter. The background hum of dread fading just enough that you finally notice it had been there all along. You pay off the last of your debt, the kind that's been silently eating a portion of your income every month for years without you fully registering its weight. The final payment clears, and days later, your credit card company raises your limit unprompted, simply because your behavior changed before you'd even processed the shift yourself. At a family dinner, someone jokes about you finally being debt-free. And underneath the joke sits something real quiet pride in completing something most people start and never finish. A relative who used to lecture you about spending now asks for your advice instead, a small but complete reversal you didn't see coming. Here's the uncomfortable insight settling in. Life still isn't easy yet, not entirely. But for the first time, every dollar coming in actually belongs to decisions you're making now instead of decisions you made years ago. You hit a real emergency fund, 3 months of expenses sitting quietly untouched, and the most noticeable change isn't financial at all. It's how you sleep deeply, without rehearsing worst-case scenarios before drifting off. Rumors of layoffs spread through your office, and you watch coworkers' faces tighten with a fear you remember intimately, but no longer feel the same way yourself. An odd, slightly guilty distance settling in where panic used to live. A friend going through a sudden job loss calls, not for money, just to talk. And you realize, with quiet surprise, you've become the calm voice in someone else's emergency. You don't mention the fund to anyone. Partly humility, partly a quiet instinct that announcing it would change how people treat you before you're ready for that shift. The realization crystallizing here is one most people don't expect this early. Life starts feeling easier not because problems disappear, but because problems stop automatically becoming emergencies the moment they show up. You finally get a raise that changes the math instead of just adjusting it slightly, and you increase your savings rate immediately, almost reflexively, before you can adjust your spending to match the new number. A relative, hearing about the raise secondhand, comments that you must be doing pretty well now. A tone somewhere between pride and quiet resentment, impossible to fully untangle. At a dinner with old friends, you instinctively reach for the check and nobody objects the way they used to. A small shift nobody mentions directly, but everyone clearly notices. You realize somewhat uncomfortably that the social pressure to spend more arrives faster than the actual desire to do so, a quiet tension nobody warned you about. The deeper truth surfacing here is one rarely discussed. Life gets easier financially at this stage, but a brand new kind of difficulty appears right alongside it. The discipline required to not let your lifestyle quietly absorb every single gain the moment it arrives. You cross into a threshold where your investments alone generate more in a strong month than weeks of your actual paycheck combined. A fact you read twice, certain there's a decimal error somewhere in the math. There's no notification for this, no celebration, just a quiet line on a screen that represents years of patience and says almost nothing about itself. A financial advisor you never contacted reaches out, unprompted, offering a complimentary consultation, a small strange confirmation that some invisible threshold just classified you into a different tier entirely. At a family gathering, a relative who once dismissed your interest in saving now asks, seriously, what you think he should do with his own retirement account? A complete reversal. Neither of you names out loud. Here's the realization settling in. Life is genuinely easier now in ways that matter. Fewer sleepless nights, fewer emergencies, but a new question quietly replaces the old one, shifting from will I be okay to what am I actually building toward. Your passive income finally crosses every essential expense combined. The full monthly cost of simply existing in your life, and the shift that follows isn't lifestyle, it's posture. A kind of detachment in stressful meetings that other people start reading as confidence, though internally it feels closer to indifference toward outcomes that used to terrify you. You decline a project your manager assumed you'd jump at, and instead of pushing back, he simply nods, treating your refusal with a respect that wasn't there a year earlier. A friend asks how you're staying so relaxed about something that would have terrified you previously, and you struggle to explain that the calm isn't confidence exactly, it's distance. The quiet peace of knowing the worst outcome no longer threatens your entire foundation. The truth surfacing here is the one most people assume arrives much earlier than it actually does. This is the first level where life genuinely starts feeling easier in a way you can actually trust, not because problems vanished, but because none of them can fully reach the foundation underneath you anymore. You finally tell someone the real numbers carefully, testing the words out loud for the first time, and their reaction surprises you, not excitement, but a quiet recalculation, as if mentally repositioning exactly where you now belong in their understanding of the world. A distant acquaintance starts liking everything you post online within minutes of you posting it, a small, almost comedic confirmation of a pattern you'd suspected but never confirmed until now. At work, a major project fails, the kind of failure that would have kept you awake rehearsing apologies a few years earlier, and instead you move through the consequences with a calm that visibly confuses your coworkers, the failure no longer threatening your survival, only your pride. An old friend reaches out after years of silence, warm and nostalgic at first, the conversation eventually drifting toward a business opportunity they'd love your thoughts on, and you recognize the pattern before the message even finishes loading. Here's the uncomfortable truth surfacing at this stage, the one almost nobody admits out loud. Life gets easier financially, almost completely, but a new, quieter difficulty replaces it. The slow realization that you can no longer fully tell who actually likes you versus who likes what you now represent. You're sitting across from a wealth advisor, discussing strategies that didn't exist in your vocabulary a few years earlier, structuring conversations not around growth anymore, but around protection. The language itself revealing a shift happening somewhere deeper than the numbers on the page. He mentions almost casually certain options available at your level, a phrase confirming what you've suspected for a while, that an entire tier of financial strategy exists, invisible to anyone who hasn't crossed this specific threshold. At a dinner with old friends, you avoid certain topics entirely, not from secrecy, but from a new awareness that even casual comments about money now land differently than you intend. A relative going through a difficult financial stretch calls, not to ask for money, just to talk, treating you, almost without realizing it, as a kind of emotional safety net simply because of what your resources represent. The uncomfortable truth crystallizing here is one rarely spoken aloud. Life is undeniably easier now in every practical sense, but the ease has quietly relocated the difficulty somewhere else entirely, from your bank account into the much harder task of figuring out who you actually are once survival stops being the daily question. You're back at a gas station, an ordinary one, on an ordinary day, when you notice someone at the next pump stop their fill manually at $20 instead of filling the tank completely, the exact same gesture you used to make yourself years ago, in a life that feels both distant and uncomfortably familiar. You don't say anything dramatic. You simply pay for the rest of their tank before they notice, the way someone once should have done for you but never did. They look at you confused, unsure what just happened or why a stranger would do something like that. You just say, "I remember exactly what that felt like," and drive off before they can fully respond. And in that single quiet moment, the entire answer to the question this video started with finally reveals itself. Life doesn't get easier at one specific number, the way you always assumed it would. It gets easier in fragments, one fear quietly replaced by a smaller different fear over and over, until one day you realize the version of you who once stopped the pump at $20 is someone you remember clearly but no longer fully recognize. The real answer was never about how rich you needed to become. It was about how many fears you were willing to slowly trade for slightly quieter ones, one level at a time, until the quiet itself finally became the life you were always actually chasing.